So ISC just dropped, and I don't know what to say about this. I'm going to come off so negative, but I'm not. I promise you I'm not. Okay? We all know it's a concept ship. So look at it. It's really big. It's really, really big, right? The only thing I'm going to say is, do you think this ship is released before 1.0? And it's like, it's one of these things where like you have to question whether or not you should buy something that's in concept. Yes, you get a better deal. Yes, it looks fucking amazing. I don't know what it does. I don't care. Look at the thing. But let's find out more about it. That's where I'll stand.
It's part 2 of our Invictus Launch Week coverage, as we look beyond the event to the new offering being unveiled at this year's Drake DefenseCon. The far superior brand excluded from the usual Invictus festivities because it's too damn cool.
Yeah, I'll go back to where
I said it, and I'm tired of pretending it's not true.
It is cool. Look at that
Drake
thing.
For life.
These sentiments were recorded in April before that rap beef stuff, and Disco would like it known that K-Dot is king. Hashtag Westside. Also, that David is the best. Woohoo! Now we resume the program.
Let's force John Crew to talk about it now.
What?
So in the Star Citizen universe, we have a lot of cargo ships, but they're sort of concentrated around the lower end of cargo hauling, sort of the low hundreds,
It's a
SEU and
cargo
below,
ship?
and the very high end where there's multi-thousands. There's a mix of cargo ships which have their cargo on the
What was that? Oh,
inside,
that was this
ones
whole
on the
series.
outside like the whole series, and we really wanted to bring something different where it's sort of sits right in the middle. It's a nice progression step and facilitates both internal and external loading of cargo, which is where the Drake Ironclad comes in.
Internal and external. Okay. Just a description, I want it. But like I said earlier, I'm not going to buy it. Because I'm not going to get it. It's not going to get
So the
made.
Drake Ironclad is the kind of next step up for
That's the
Drake cargo
problem.
ships. It kind of builds on what the Caterpillar brings, but in a much larger form.
It's fucking amazing looking.
The Drake
Holy
Ironclad
shit.
is
It
a
looks so good.
six-person multi-crew armored freighter. A large
I'm telling you guys, I knew it was going to happen. They need the money, right? They need to make the money. There's nothing wrong with that. Draw a pretty picture. Dummies are going to buy it. I'm not going to be that dummy, but I am like this image right here. I am resisting so hard to not be that dummy. I'm just going to say it right now. I am resisting so hard to not be that dummy. I might be that dumb.
portion of the ship is
It's
dedicated
so-
to the cargo bay
it's so
at the front of
sick
it,
looking.
which has both a front ramp for loading and unloading cargo and small vehicles on the ground, as well as a retractable roof for doing that in space with EVA as well.
Little tight entrances to cargo ships doesn't necessarily lend itself to when you're out in deep space and you're trying to quickly move some cargo from one person's ship into your ship.
Okay.
Really, you want as much kind of
All right, just tell me how much it is.
access to be able to do that as you possibly can. So by having this kind of much larger opening on top of the
Yeah,
ship,
it's
it
over.
allows us to kind of bring cargo in much easier.
So its role being a sort of armored freighter comes from two distinct ways. One, the cargo itself is more protected. It's within the cargo bay that has the armored roof section that covers it. So unlike
I did not lose my will. Just so you guys know, I don't even have the refinery ship, and you guys know me. I don't even have the Expanse, right? Because I just knew they weren't going to make it. I'm not going to buy it, but I really want it. I really, really want it. I'm not going to buy it no matter what. Because I just, look at it. Look at it. How far away are we from this being delivered? Although, look at the size of it. It's like Hull C sized.
a Hull C where the cargo's on the outside, you can load it from the outside but then protect it with the Ironclad.
It's not that big.
Is also more heavily armored than the Caterpillar, so it kind of gives a little bit more security to your kind of precious cargo.
The exterior is
Did
very
I see the extra ship on it? Where? No. I don't see any extra ship.
C where the cargo
precious cargo.
The exterior is very classic Drake brutish styling, a whole lot of engines and a lot of
I like the
framework and quite
moving
thin
concept
structural elements support the rest of the ship.
Left
Very
side?
bare bones
Oh, like the
styling.
cat?
It doesn't have lots of nice padding. It's all there and exposed, and it's really just sort of rugged and to the point. So
Okay.
the Ironclad is really 3 distinct areas. You have all the accommodation in the rear sort of third of the ship. The front 2/3 is really just this cargo bay with the front entrance and the retractable roof. And then you have the command module, which has seats for the crew, plus a few little jump seats for everyone else. Command module is there to steer the ship when it's attached, and the command module serves as the escape pod as well. The only time
Standard.
you really want to detach it is in an emergency. It's not designed to be your sort of primary ship flying around.
It kind of gives you a little bit of a get out of jail free
How much
card
is the C2?
if you're transporting stuff that is quite valuable, quite sought after in maybe some of our less desirable systems. What it allows you to do is kind of have a little bit of security. So if you're getting attacked or you're
400?
getting yourself into trouble, if you
That's
want
what this should
to
be-
save
that's what
yourself,
this should cost.
you can kind of jettison your cargo and try and get out of Dodge and kind of get out to safety. And I think that's like a really important thing as we get closer to Death of a Spaceman.
With some of the recent tech that's come online, this brought us one step closer to implementing command modules properly. So not only will you see this detachable command module feature on the
Bro, don't get fooled by the moving concept art, though. It looks really cool, but it's just a fucking picture. I cannot fall for this. I cannot fall for this. I will not fall for this.
Ironclad, but as well, it will happen on the Caterpillar.
Interior-wise, you've kind of
I
got two
have
entrances
enough
onto the ship.
JPEGs in my hangar
You
that
can
are never
either
gonna get made.
enter via the command module, and that takes you straight into a kind of corridor section. It's kind of like almost like a mezzanine. You can either go up to the habitation
Guys, look at it. It's white box. Oh my
area,
god.
which is top floor of the ship, gives you like super nice views out both the kind of cargo out the front and the rear of the ship. Or you can kind of come down the ship into the main habitation area. Alternatively, you can
It's not even white box. It's called concept mesh. Another thing, do not fall for it. They do this often, and it makes it seem like it's in production. It is not in production unless they tell it to you that it's in production. So hopefully throughout the show, we'll find out if it's in production or not. Maybe there'll be an SCL. We'll find out if it's in production or not. This is the only time I will never tell you what to do with your money. I'm only talking, like I'm speaking out loud my own thoughts. This is one of the only times I'll ever tell you to do something, like to think about something with your money. Truly think if they are going to deliver this to you within the next few years. And is that something you want to invest in now or just, get it in game later, or things like guys, you can buy the C2 in game right now, right? You could buy the whole C in game right now. You're eventually going to be able to buy this thing in game. So it's one of those things where like, be smart, but CIG is so good at their job because even me, I am struggling.
through the
I'm like, oh, well, I can melt the, XYZ.
collar airlock, that's just on the opposite side of the ship. At the rear of the interior of the ship, we've kind of got the heart of the engines. It's the big kind of engineering area where we've got all of the
Yeah, like putting it in your buyback list might not be a bad idea. Use some store credit, throw in your buyback, and then you're good.
kind of main functional components needed for moving such a large ship. And then if you kind of come slightly further forward, we call it the kind of like the command deck.
Okay.
It's not a bridge, you can't fly the ship from it, but it's where you operate the tractor beams. It's where it kind of gives you good views out over the front and into space.
Beautiful. That's awesome.
You've got the tractor beam turrets, but also, visually you can kind of stand in this area or sit in this area and look
That's really
out
well thought
over
out.
the front and over the bow of the ship and kind of really see
What I'll say here, we don't know what the cargo capacity is yet. We might find out. What I'll say about this is the first ship designed after the cargo refactor, like the first cargo ship designed. So it's the most thought out in terms of how the players interact with cargo, how tractor beams work, where they should be, all that stuff. So out of all the ships that we currently use, the C2 is fucking terrible, right? The C2 is horrible in comparison to this. C2 doesn't even have a tractor beam, right? So when this thing actually does release, it's going to be at a much higher standard in terms of how we interact with things than before. When, though? When is the question?
what you're trying to pull in or what you're trying to capture. into your cargo hold. As we come downstairs, we've got a little kind of covered area at the rear of the cargo hold, and that is where you can store a couple of small ground vehicles or some of your equipment for moving vehicles and cargo around.
They're starting to cook,
And then
man,
you're
in
into
terms
the
of these
main
interiors.
cargo hold of the ship, and this takes up the majority of the interior space, is this large cargo hold. One of the things that we were kind of really keen to do was give lots of different views and different angles down into this cargo hold. Again, as we're exploring slightly less lawful systems, we wanted to give the players as much opportunities as we can to kind of be safe aboard their own ship. So either side of the cargo hold, we've got these gantries that run completely front to rear on the ship, and they give great view down into your cargo bay. They also give that opportunity of, if there's someone tries to board you via the cargo bay, it gives you some nice cover opportunities. And we've also got a few little windows that kind of look down into it as well.
I mean, if you want to give them cover, that these should be, there should be panels here. They shouldn't be open.
As you move to the kind of like the very front, very nose of the ship, those gantries lead into kind of secure cargo area. It's somewhere that's a little bit more difficult to get to when you kind of enter the ship.
Secure cargo
The big thing
area.
we were referencing when we were looking at it was this idea of police evidence rooms. And so these kind of individual cages where you could put your most secure cargo, whatever it might be, in this area, and it would make it quite difficult to try and breach in or out of that area. So it gives us just somewhere a little bit more secure for kind of smaller cargo items. Finally,
That did not look very big. That looked like little 1 SCU boxes. That's it.
at the very front, we've got access to one of the main turrets.
They look
and
like
the
a
captain
brig,
turret.
yeah.
The biggest attraction for me with it is just the versatility of the cargo space. From a good citizen law standpoint,
It's just open.
it is a cargo ship, but also that retractable roof and the tractor beams on board it give it some less legal opportunities for perhaps taking other people's cargo ships in space and on the ground. At the time of recording, we're also exploring a more military-themed variant of the Ironclad. Doesn't have the name yet, so we'll just call it the Drake.
Ironclad Assault.
Compared to the base ship, this has been developed to support ground assault operations. It has additional turrets covering.
It is the Drake C series. It is the C2, A2, and M2. They're just
the upper and lower
they're copying something that worked, and it's really smart.
Surfaces to provide more fire support. And the front section of the cargo area has been redesigned to enable our largest vehicles in game to be deployed from it,
100%.
such as the tank. In addition, the cargo bay has been reduced in size to facilitate a onboard repair facility. So for those of you who want to have a journey in the cargo profession, traditionally you would start out in something, say like...
I can't believe they made the C2 horrible with one picture. They made the entire Crusader C series completely obsolete with one fucking picture.
A hull A. The next step up from there really is sort of into Drake Caterpillar territory. So you're doing roughly an 8 to 10 times jump in cargo capacity. From
What is
there,
this?
the Ironclad sits nicely between those smaller ships and the much larger bulk carriers such as the Hull C, and then ultimately you get to things like the Hull D, E, and Kraken at the end of the cargo career.
Sounds like 1K. Sounds like 1K SCU.
Is that a hint at anything?
It's not a hint at anything.
Larger than the C2 it
Making the Ironclad makes the Kraken easier.
So building out the Ironclad does, of course, kind of help us with building out the Kraken. I think increasing that visual library of assets that we can pull from.
Did you just hear that bullshit? Did you just hear that fucking bullshit? Who told you to say that?
And use in a Drake manufacturer at the right scale
they are
is
so ridiculous.
super valuable for when we move on to the large ships.
Super valuable in fucking 12 years. Shut up. I love these guys. You guys are amazing, but you're also absolute comedians. It's no knock on the actual individuals. It's just the company as a whole. It's a comedy show.
Of course, in non-Drake related news, players in this year's event probably noticed the long-awaited RSI Polaris touring around the Stanton system. Well, it's not quite flight ready yet, but we thought we'd ask the guys for a status update all the same and see if we can't get a closer look at the progress being made while we do it.
We really want to have some form of the exterior of the Polaris at Invictus launch week.
Bro, does anybody care after what they just showed?
We wanted to mix up the capital ships on display this year.
Being a big kind of military show, it made perfect sense to be able to kind of show it off in its best light. We pushed quite hard to get the exterior to a point where we're happy to show it publicly.
This meant we've prioritized doing the exterior over the interior. So the exterior you see is pretty much final art. All it is missing is really the damage setup, as I'm sure people have tried to do. It is currently invulnerable, or hopefully invulnerable in game.
Visually, I think not only have we been trying to get it out so we can show it, but we've also tried to kind of really push the quality of the exteriors of some of our kind of like large capital ships. And what that has meant is that we needed to focus a few more artists than what we'd normally put
All right, that's the first time I've seen it flying. It looks awesome.
on the exterior of a ship,
take it back.
just to make sure we kind of hit that quality bar and we hit it on time. It's pretty close to being
looks really cool.
Lot Zero, which means that the majority of the main modeling's done. There's still a whole bunch of decal work. The finer details, what we call as POM details, pass needs to be done, and that really kind of helps to elevate the kind of like the close read. I think
For me personally, guys, exterior of ships don't really excite me. The first one that ever really did was actually that Drake Ironclad, but the interior of the ships is what really sells me on it, and I think that's kind of what they're going to be showing today, and I'm really interested in that.
the distance read and the mid reads are like brilliant, and to be fair, the close read when you get up in personal is looking really, really good. It's just we've still got that kind of like
I don't play in
final
third person,
sprinkle
you know?
of polish to go on.
With the focus on the exterior and pushing that as far as we could in the time we had, the interior is not quite as far along. It is more around the grey box stage, but the people we put on the exterior now will be moving on to the interior.
Okay.
Normally on a vehicle is we try to kind of keep the development stages in line throughout the kind of like the life
like the
cycle of its
homey
development. It
interiors.
means that the interior isn't, you know, it's not at the same level that the exterior is.
We've been focusing on the core traversal areas of the ship.
But this is
The
military.
majority of the rooms have now been worked up. I think there's maybe
it's gonna be
2
like
or
cold.
3 rooms that are still in white box that still need, you know, a decent amount of kind of modelling and work doing to them. But the rest of the rooms now are kind of getting to the point where we're pretty close to grey box.
So the bridge, the main corridors, the hab area, the cargo bay, torpedo rooms, and all the turrets. So these are a bit further along than some of the more secondary rooms like the brig and the medical bay.
When you think of the Polaris, like its key points are the torpedoes. And I think that's been an area that has needed quite a lot of iteration on, and we're not quite there yet. One of the things that we're kind of really trying to make sure feels good from a player's point of view is the kind of like the loading of the torpedoes and seeing them kind of be from in your cargo hold to being in the kind of like loading mechanism and then being ready to fire. So on the kind of like
That's
lower
very
deck
cool.
and front half of the vehicle, we've got these big torpedo loaders. And that's an area that it's needed quite a lot of iteration to make sure it feels right. And we are still in that process. It's not kind of fully.
A2 bomb loading when? That is a really good question to ask an SCL or something like that if they do that this week, is to ask them, you know, is the tech that you use here, can we utilize it in the bombers of the Crusader series?
Signed off. We're not completely happy with that area, but it certainly kind of makes up the heart of the ship. Otherwise, on the interior, the main upper deck is kind of really starting to come on. The engineering section is another kind of area that I think is really important in our capital ships and kind of getting to a level that we're happy with. From the kind of concept to into production, we have opened up the bridge of the ship a little bit. One of the things we wanted to do was when you kind of enter onto the bridge, this should feel kind of like super exciting and super rewarding to the player. If they've managed to kind of get one of these ships, we want it to feel like they are kind of really living that kind of military life dream. So we've spent a bit of time kind of opening it up, giving some nicer views as you kind of enter onto the bridge itself. What we really wanted to do was kind of make sure that the player views are good, the captain gets a great kind of view out the front, and make sure
The
that
the missiles going right by the cockpit are
getting around that area, especially as kind of more and more kind of multi-crew gameplay systems come online. We want to make sure that there's enough space on that bridge to have not just the captain and the pilot, but a whole crew there.
Compared to the concept mesh, one not big change, but unresolved area was the hangar opening. It's quite a complex shape to open. So we spent a lot of time working on that, but that's all resolved. And then another thing we are looking at in the future is actually doing some more upgunning of the turrets. So it is not just a torpedo boat. it can sort of hold its own against other capital ships with its turrets. You'll see more of that as we get closer to releasing it, which we are aiming for at IAE this year.
So,
Okay.
what did we learn this week? Well, we learned that the Drake
wanna
Ironclad is the
rewatch-
next cargo ship from Drake designed to fill that gap between the Caterpillar
I just wanna
and the
rewatch.
larger Hull series offerings.
So in between the Caterpillar and the Hull series, so we're talking 566 SCU to somewhere between 566 and 4,000. Where is that? Where that is such a wide range. Like, what? I think it's going to be 1,000, right? Because it doesn't look. It sat in a large hangar about the size of a reclaimer, length-wise. Yeah, C2 is 696, so it is definitely above the C2. I think it's going to be right around 1,000. He said smaller than the C2. He said bigger than the C2. He said bigger than the C2.
That working on it helps to flesh out resources needed to bring the
Four Nova tanks was in the smaller cargo bay.
long-awaited Kraken to life in the future, and that the Polaris is coming along pretty nicely, even if it's not.
Four tanks is bigger than the C2, yeah, because it can only fit 3, and it's lengthwise, right? So maybe 3, or is it just 2? I think it's just 2. So you could almost consider it double, and that was, and it had a repair bay, and that was the smaller one. So it is minimum 1,000 SCU. So it's looking more like 1,200 SCU. Yeah, 1,500 is not a bad
Drake,
call.
which we didn't learn was the best
Hey,
because we all
C2
already
owners,
knew that
you're
in
melting.
our hearts.
But Disco says KDOT is the best.
And with that, this very long 17-episode season of Inside Star Citizen comes to a close. We said we'd go straight through until Alpha 323 was out, and we did that, and then some more. And it's time for our team to take a breather, catch up on some admin work, and begin
Wait. I thought we weren't taking breathers. I forgot what he said.
working on the next great season of ISC that'll start up again on June 20th. So for Inside Star Citizen, I'm Jared Hutt.
He literally said they weren't going to take the months off. He's taking a month off. Am I right on that? They literally said we're not going to do this anymore. Okay, yeah, just trying to keep them accountable to this one. Okay, cool. Like, I don't necessarily care, but at the same time, I'll just say this feedback-wise. ISC being consistent the entire time has, and since CitizenCon 2023, they have been very consistent about delivering something interesting to talk about every single week. This will be the first time that we don't have that. It sounds like, outside of the obvious like Christmas break, which was of course dead, but I think we had like patches to play and stuff. Yeah, that was surprising. I mean, we'll still have SCLs, I think, right?
Thanks for taking the time to let us.
Like, this isn't a content creator issue for me. It has been really cool to every week have something to kind of sink your teeth into and be interested in Star Citizen. Every week I've been interested in something, which has been a total change of pace from every year I've ever had with Star Citizen as a backer. Screw creating content, screw making videos, things like that. It has been a really welcome thing, and I guess that's done. But he literally said that they were not going to take these breaks, and they're taking a month, which is, bro, we're making videos here.
Share the process of game development with you each week.
I don't understand their process.
And we'll see you when we get back.
What is this? There's a bit at the end. Oh, this is all the...
Welcome.
The Among Us guy moments. do I feel entitled? Because they literally said we would have it. Face reveal. Guys, he doesn't play the game. It's not Jared. Okay? His character plays the game. It's not Jared. There's no chance. I'm just kidding. I think he actually does. If he doesn't play the game, he is very on top of the people who do. And I think this year, like SEL, he's asked a lot of follow-up questions and understands the sentiment of the community better than any year before. So I don't want to knock him completely, but yeah, it's not Jared. It's a Jared clone. But that's pretty funny. That was the idea of whoever made the best version, I think, was going to be the Among Us character. That's what that is. We won't know the price of the Ironclad until Drake Day, which is in 3 days, I think, from now. This is being recorded on Thursday. I am going to need to... I'm just going to melt all my C-Series ships, because what's the point? It's on Saturday? Okay. If it's 1,000 SCU, how much is... Now we have to ask, what does the whole C cost? Because they've cheapened the value of cargo ships pretty heavy. At least in game. I'm not going to melt. I'm not going to do anything, to be perfectly honest with you. I'm not going to buy it. I'm just curious. But yeah, I just don't think it's going to come in game anytime soon. Until they tell me it's actively in development, it's the next ship we're going to make, you know, it's going to help us make the Kraken thing. That's a bunch of BS. So I don't buy that one, but that's really exciting. And the Polaris is now just like an afterthought. But yeah, that was crazy.